Right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and whatever it may be, wherever you are. Wonderful to have you join us on our webinar today. Now, for those of you who've been on my previous webinars, I like to have some fun, I like to get your brains going, but I decided that you've probably heard enough from me. And so what I've done is to try and make things different. This webinar, we have decided to invite some experts from around the country, people who are, as I've called it, behind the screens of what's going on in education today, and to maybe try and sort of pierce those screens and have a look and what are people doing, because I think there's no better way to try and advance this conversation and move more boldly into this new era, whether it's kicking or screaming or otherwise, and having a conversation around that. And we'll introduce our panelists in a moment. But what I thought, just for some fun, and while other people are still trying to join, you know what it's like. You're suddenly like, oh yes, there's that webinar, and quickly trying to find your login link. So there's still people that are going to be joining us, I am sure. So what I would like to do is just to warm up with something fun, just to start with. And so let us begin with a little quiz. Now, I like to try new technology. For those of you in my online courses, I make use of a lot of tools, and all the tools that I teach about on my online courses are essentially free. There's just so much amazing free stuff out there. But it's not so much about the tool itself, it's about how we teach with the tool. And I'm sure you all know I'm very passionate about pedagogy. But anyway, this is a great little tool. So if you want to join in, you can either grab your phone and you whack it on that and scan the QR code, or you can go to slido.com and put in that number. And so we'll have a quick little quiz, and this is just a fun way for us to, warm up, get our brains going. Now, as I said, I've just found this tool called Slido. Some of you may have seen it before. I had come across it a while ago, but I hadn't tried it. So I thought, oh, heck, nothing better than live webinar to try some new tools. I spend a lot of time using Mentimeter. Mentimeter is really good. The problem is you can only have 3, I think it's slides if you want to have the free option. Whereas a Slido, again, the free option has a whole lot of possibilities of what you can do with it, just like everything is a paid option. But what's really cool about it is you can use it and you can embed it into, I'm using Google Slides at the moment, it'll embed into PowerPoint. And so you can bring one of the key pedagogies, which I consider to be really important in modern teaching, is the pedagogy of correction. You can bring that into your PowerPoint, so it's not just about instruction and passive consumption. And as you'll see later, you can bring in some of the other pedagogies as well with this, such as conversation, etc. So this is a little bit of a test for me, and hopefully a little bit of fun for you as well, just while we wait for everyone to come in and settle in. So very similar, and maybe not as gamified as some of their tools like Kahoot, which is really like bang, 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 the music. I'll provide the music in the background. I'll just like sing so that you get the pressure going, but really quite simple to use. So I think this is another tool that I'm definitely going to include in my online course. And that's the exciting thing, is once you understand things from a pedagogic lens and basis, there's so many exciting tools that you can just bring in and use as and when you want. So let's have a quick go through the competition and see who is on the ball. So now there are going to be a couple of quiz questions. The key thing with these quiz questions is you've got to answer quick. So here we go, the first one. And answer before your time is up. Currently, my brain is, which of these? Go, 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 go. Quickly, before that timer is up, you've got to get your answer in. Come on, quickly. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Excellent. None of these. 48% of you saying that. Wow, none of these. 26%. Oh, you people are very clever. Are you really clever? Well, let us see. The correct answer is none of these. Currently, my brain is none of these. Trick question. Why? Because it's an incorrect spelling of full. That is Phil, like Phil Fred. You can't be half Phil. So that was, yeah, you see, you got to be on the ball all the time. So that was just to trick you, just to see if you're on the ball. But here's a general knowledge question. Which of these is not the color of the rainbow? Are you going, hey, rainbow, I remember the rainbow. Did it have red? What was that saying that it had? Right, can you remember the saying? 10 seconds left. Get your answers in. Red, yellow, purple, or orange. Which of those is not a color of the rainbow? 3 seconds, 2, 1. Time up. Fantastic. Right. We got 64% going purple. Is that 64% right? Well, we're about to discover. Here is the moment of truth. Is purple a color of the rainbow? Because the majority, yes, 64% getting that right. You remember how it goes? Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. There is no purple. Right, so well done to those who said purple. 64, very bright and intelligent audience we have here. A before E, except after. Yeah, it's one of those sayings when it comes to spelling and it doesn't actually even work, but it's one of those things you learned at school. And if you are still at school, university or other place, you should remember what this one is. A before E, except after C, I, O, or U. Which one is it? With 4 seconds left. Quickly, just a few seconds. 2, 1, and time up. And 70, what is it? 71% going for C. A before E, are you sure? And let us see what is the correct answer. A before E, except after C. Bang, well done. Okay, so 71% of you getting that right. You are remembering the olden days. Okay, I thought we'd just finish off with a little simple maths question. I think this is the last one. There may be one after this. 30 divided by half plus 10. Very, very simple, just to make sure our minds are both English and mathematically aligned, and we are ready for what's coming up. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Bring time up. Right, everyone would have got this one right. And we've got 52% saying 25. So that must be the right answer. Okay. And 45 saying 70. Who would have known where they would have got that from? Right. So let's actually have a look and see what actually is the correct answer. Oh, it's 70. Oh, that's distressing. 52% of you getting it wrong. Not reading the question carefully. 30 divided by half, not divided by 2. So 30 divided by half is 60. Plus 10 is 70. Yes. Right. So I can hear some cheering in the background there. People go crazy. And on the top of the leaderboard, well done to Seren. Yay, Seren. Okay. I can't hear you, but I'm sure you're very happy. Logan, Zoe, Dorian, and Raider. Oh, the top two getting full marks. Well done, people. But Seren a little bit fast, only taking 31 seconds overall to answer these questions. So well done. And the hardest question was that one there. So you can see a great little tool because it even highlights which are the difficult questions. And so when you use things like this in terms of teaching, and especially to support a pedagogy like correction, have fun, but show something, use it to illustrate a point. And I always like to encourage the students to say, you know what, making mistakes, it's great because that's how you learn. Right. So that's really all I wanted to do to get us all warmed up, and I see more people have joined us in the interim. So wonderful to have those who have just joined us. So behind the screens, insights from educators. This is our inaugural, very first panel discussion around this theme. And my intention is, and I'll talk about it near the end, to have more of these. And starring in this particular production, we have 3 auspicious people from different parts of the world. We have Leslie Chain, he is from Westville Boys High. We have Zaffar Ahmed from Al-Falaah College, and we have Linda Bradfield from St. Mary's Waverley up in the Johannesburg area. So we are really, really, really excited to have these 3 people to be part of what we're going to be doing here today. So I don't want to delay much further. I want us to now get on to hearing those people and not me. So first up, we're going to be hearing from Leslie. And I just want to quickly tell you a little bit about Leslie before he speaks to us. Leslie has an honors degree in mathematics and has 33 years experience in teaching of mathematics to high school learners. He currently teaches grade 11 and 12 learners. His style of teaching promotes the understanding of concepts through discovery and curiosity. He believes that the skills of solving problems can be instilled in every learner and can be developed over a period of time. Leslie's extensive involvement in the field of mathematics assessment led to his appointment as Director of Academics at Westville Boys High School. He focuses on teachers paying attention to problem solving and higher order thinking, as well as using teaching methods that address multiple learning styles that cater for the 21st century learner. He's currently Deputy Headmaster and is exploring teaching with technology and blended learning. He believes that these ideas will be vital for schooling in the future. So we are very, very excited to have Leslie with us. And I'm going to hand over to him just to give a short introduction to himself and what he is doing. So Leslie, over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone. At the moment, I'm busy trying to sort out where we're going. But what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to take you through what we have done at Westville and some of my thinking behind what we've been doing. Let's start off with some very general guidelines. The important thing is that you've got to develop a solution for a school that works around the strengths and weaknesses of the institution. What works in one institution does not necessarily work in another. And you may not get the same results in another institution. What's important is that the people who are driving the process must be very clear about what you want to achieve in the end. But at the same time, you also need to be brave, because sometimes you're going to be treading or you're going to walk down untrodden path. And you're going to be brave to see it through. The second thing that I would speak about in the general guidelines is don't take anything for granted in this new age that we're living in, or we're working in. We had very little time to put an online program together. We were literally building this aeroplane as it was flying. And some teachers became very terrified at the prospect that they were going to, of appearing in a video. They've never had such exposure before. But my biggest revelation in the process of getting this off the ground was the fear shown by learners. Now, when we see learners in the classroom, we think, oh, these kids are fantastic with technology and whatever. But a number of them were very, very anxious about this new way of engagement. So that's something you need to bear in mind when you're starting off an online program. Create support structures right from the beginning. Now, here the support structures are not only for learners, but also for teachers. Because one of the things that happened to us at the beginning was that there were a few teachers who were concerned that their jobs were online because of this online program. And we had to actually settle them down. And it's only when they settle down where they're starting to become productive again. My view on this is that it takes a trained teacher, a skilled teacher, to develop and deliver a very successful online program. As far as learners were concerned, we had a number of learners who were concerned about how are they going to log in, because they had no training on this. And will there be assistance if they have challenges? In the first week of launching, this was a major problem for learners. Very, very anxious, very unsettled. It's only when they started seeing, okay, we can survive this, that they move on. The next thing that I would like to speak on very quickly is the platform that you choose. It's important that you work on a single platform across the school. It becomes quite stressful for learners to try to figure out, okay, in maths I'm on Zoom, in science I'm on Google Meets, in history I'm on Microsoft Teams, and then now they've got to become familiar with the operation of each platform. So it becomes quite stressful, especially when they start mixing these platforms up. And it would be a tragedy, really, if learners drop out of a program simply because of technology. So select a platform and use that across the school. The other important thing is that the structure that you choose must be relevant to the context of your school. Because, like I said at the beginning, what works in one school doesn't necessarily work in another. Now, the Westville context was very challenging from the outset. We have a number of very experienced teachers at our school, and they are in the comfort zone. These teachers were somewhat reluctant to change their traditional methods of teaching or engagement. At the same time, we've got teachers who are at different levels of competence using computer applications. And in the mix, we've got novice teachers who are in the element teaching using technology. At the same time, we are a big school and we have multiple classes in each grade. So how do we now take all of these things that make up the Westville context and develop a program that will address what we require and at the same time not exclude people? So we decided that we were going to go through a very different structure. We're going to have a single class per subject in each grade. Firstly, this gave teachers the opportunity to collaborate with each other. And it also created a good forum for discussion and development among the teachers. Some teachers were able to learn how to use technology, and others were getting a deeper insight into the content being taught. To me, it did not make sense that we have 4 or 5 teachers doing the same thing. I mean, to prepare the same lesson and to present the same lesson, it was a waste of manpower. So by splitting the workload, it meant that teachers would have more time on their hands to focus on delivery and thus make the program more effective. The other thing about the structure is, how do you communicate with parents? Because you can't leave parents out of the loop. And the idea of trying to send out communication in bulk to parents per class was a daunting one, as opposed to sending out communication to parents by grade. So it made sense then from a communication point of view that we went to the grade. And lastly, in terms of where we are or where we were, we needed the entire grade to be moving along the same pace, so that when we got back to school, we were all on the same pace, same place. And if we had to close again, it would not be a problem, because we would be, all the classes would be at the same point in the curriculum, give or take a lesson or 2. So the kind of structure is important in your development. When it came to implementing the structure, we focused on 2 criteria. The first being, it must be effective, and the second, no person must be left behind. You know, as far as possible, we need to work as a school rather than individuals. So what we did here to address this issue, we adopted a phased approach to the implementation. In phase 1, the idea was getting the entire school used to the new way of communication and receiving work. We posted work on Google Classroom that was easy enough for learners to teach themselves. This gave both teachers and learners the opportunity to get familiar with the method of communication and teaching and learning. And it also gave us, in the management, some time to think about what is the level of access at our school. Because remember, when we closed school, it was a rush. So we did not have that kind of information. So it gave us a little bit of time to actually assess the situation. This was fun for a few weeks, but before long, teachers started experimenting with the assignment and the quiz features on Google Classroom. And they went about setting formative assessment tasks. Very excited with having got to that stage. Now the demand was, we need to provide feedback. So we went about now looking at how can we provide feedback to the learners. And in response to this, we initiated online question and answer sessions. And we didn't go full onto an online teaching situation, but again, now we have a different way of communication. We're talking about online question and answer sessions using Google Meet. So we have we've got to get them, both teachers and learners, used to the idea of how do we engage now on this format. After a while, we discovered that we need to continue with this so that we build confidence on it. But how do I get topics now accessible topics from various for this to continue? We actually didn't worry too much about the curriculum and drew on topics from terms 3 and 4, just to make sure that the boys are confident by the time we got through these topics. The one thing I discovered in the process is that when you use Google Forms to access, to get feedback from the boys on the content, this was often very slow or not forthcoming at all. I don't know, for some reason, that wasn't appealing to the kids. And then the last phase was where we moved on to full online engagement for 2 or 3 reasons. Firstly, our staff and learners were quite familiar now, having about 3-4 weeks of interaction with question and answers. We're quite familiar with the way we engaged in this new format. And secondly, we had completed most of the aspects of work that was accessible to the learners. So we needed to move on to work that was a little bit more cognitively demanding. But in the process, what became a stumbling block here was the enthusiasm of teachers got the better of a number of them. And we were actually forced to develop an online timetable for the program, because some teachers now became so excited about what they were doing that they lost track of time. And our expectations of the online engagement was very, very simple. Post work on Google Classroom, and you can either post work for the week or post work per day, it didn't matter to me. You will teach using Google Meet, and in the teaching session that was allocated to you, you would spend the first 15 minutes to explain a concept or an example, and then utilize the rest of that time in the session for questions and queries. For 2 reasons. One is that I did not want it to become a lecture that would turn kids off. And secondly, for those learners who are having challenges with access, with data challenges, it gave them the option to leave the lesson after the content part of the lesson was taught. But in addition to that, the request was made that all lessons of this nature must be recorded and posted on Google Classroom. So that became accessible to learners after the lesson was actually done. And many of the learners actually commented that they appreciated the fact that they had access to these lessons after the session was done. Those children who had difficulty in grasping something during the online session were able to go back to it and watch it again, and that helped them in overcoming their challenges. Whilst those who were unable to attend the online session were able to access it at their convenience. And this was often learners where device was shared or they had issues with data. We were getting assignments back from kids very late in the night. What also happened through this online session was that we had some learners who formed their own little subgroups and had their own conversations about content. So it actually forced learners into a different mode of learning where collaboration became the key thing. Some note from the teachers was that they were able to get more done in the time that was allocated to them because there was very little disturbance, as you normally have in a classroom. Boys moving around and they need extra time for this. So what they were doing was instead of just continuing with content, it left them with more time to have conversation about the content that they discussed in the lesson. And this is one of the pillars of the blended or the activated teaching pedagogy, conversation. It's not only about lecturing, it's about having conversation about the content. Now, with this conversation style of teaching, the response from learners was that they really enjoyed this kind of engagement. They actually felt that they learned more in these classrooms than under the normal conditions. What was the drawback that we experienced from this was that the children who lacked discipline often fell behind with the work, and the highly dependent learner was less likely to engage with the work and ask any questions. So what is the future of online teaching at Westville Boys High? We continue to use this format or this platform to support learners who are having comorbidities. They are benefiting quite a bit out of it. But in the long term, we can't reverse to the old way of teaching. And in the long term, the traditional way of teaching will have to be replaced. And I think we are now in a situation where teachers have acquired sufficient skills that will allow us to bridge the gap between teaching styles and learning styles. If we still stay on the same rail track that we are currently on, we're going to get run over. And we're going to find that kids are going to move more and more to homeschooling or online teaching. So we can now use this to develop and hone the 21st century skills that learners will need in the world of work. The other thing is that the level of motivation is very, very high at the moment among teachers. Now, what I've done is I've created a group of ambassadors who are comfortable with various applications that are used in the classroom. Their role at this point in time is to provide support to teachers to gain confidence in using various applications. But at the same time, they're going to devote the rest of this year to upskilling on blended learning pedagogy. And then early next year, they will be able to implement blended teaching and learning in our school. It is my hope that all the teachers at the school will switch to blended learning at the beginning of 2022. So that's my little introduction. Thanks, Greg.
Right. Thanks very much, Leslie. That was great insight. And you raised a whole lot of things. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let each of the speakers do their intro, and then we're going to explore some of the things you raised, because I have a whole lot of notes written down and things I want to chat a little bit about. Also, as I said, if people have got questions, you can either put them in the chat or you can put them in the Q&A, and we'll put those to our panelists later on. So thanks again, Leslie, for that. Right, next we're going to hand over to Zaffar. He's going to do his introduction. So fantastic, he shared his screen. That is wonderful. And I just want to hold on a minute at the moment. I need to get your right, hold on, Zaffar. There's one. Let me highlight your video and spotlight you. Right, fantastic. Okay, so over to you, Zaffar.
Good day, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be with you this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be in part of the world. As I was introduced, my name is Zaffar Ahmed. I'm headmaster of Al-Falaah College, a school up in Durban. We have 1,100 students from grade R to grade 12, situated on a beautiful campus. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what, why, and how, but time doesn't permit, so I may just spend a little time, more time on one of those aspects than to cover all. I think it's a reality that we're going to define the future of the world differently. 2020 is a defining moment in human history, and we're going to look back at the world, and we're going to refer to BC and AC as before COVID and after COVID. And everything we do is going to be defined by this, including learning and teaching. Now, when we were forced to give up the sanctuary of the classroom and go into lockdown, I think there were three basic responses that schools embarked on. One was the urgent, immediate response to the inability to be to school. And as Leslie alluded, some people just did whatever they could quickly and easily. Some schools were doing multiple things, very disorganized, every teacher doing their own thing. So that was the first sort of response. The second response was some schools took some time to plan and then implemented. But then, of course, there were some other schools who sat down and took a strategic approach because they knew that this was a defining moment for schooling. And while it may take a little longer, it may be better and more prudent to sit down and plan properly and take a strategic approach to how they would like to proceed. And it's the old adage about measure twice and cut once. Is you rather take a bit of time, but make sure you put forward the best thing. Now, I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the stars of the show are really our teachers. 2020 has to be the single year in which the steepest learning curve for any group of people took place, and that is for our teachers. It was a complete turning inside out of everything we were comfortable with doing, everything we knew about doing. And our teachers, I suppose in many schools, have stories to tell about how our teachers came to the fore. I think, Craig, we need to write to United Nations and declare 2020 the International Year of the Teachers. Throughout the world, I know teachers have really come to the fore. So what has been our approach at Al-Falaah College? Because we go from preschool all the way to matric, we had to accommodate all of them. We took our time. We did not rush into anything when we went into lockdown. In fact, on the 15th of March, we had our first COVID case, not a direct case, but someone at school who came into contact with an overseas guest who was COVID positive. So we had to close school abruptly 1 week before schools closed. We therefore had an additional challenge that we did everything remotely after an abrupt closing of the school. So, I mean, here's a copy or image of our preschool. We didn't call it a website, we called it a fun site. And all the preschool activities were launched through there. There's a lovely play on word. This was our grade 1 website. And this was a single portal for all of grade 1 content, and all the parents and students came to this wonderful website. We were fortunate at Al-Falaah College for 3 years now. We've already introduced iPads, and every student in grades 8, 9, and 10 already has an iPad, a school-issued iPad. And while we were at school face-to-face, we already were in a digital journey for the last 3 years. So these grades actually had an advantage. Our teachers were already trained, the platform was in place, digital content was already in place. So it was very, very easy for these teachers just to continue. In fact, they didn't lose a single day. The digital content was preloaded in advance for these grades. So they did exceptionally well in trying to sort of navigate the new era we found ourselves in. So this was very good for us. And because some of these teachers also taught other grades, it wasn't difficult for them to make the migration and sort of carry on with digital work in the other grades. So what did we do for the rest of the grades? The foundation phase, as I showed you, we used a website model for delivery. The grade 8, 9, and 10, we used the iPad model. And for grades 4 to 12, we launched a Moodle. And this has served us exceptionally well. We haven't had a single technical hitch with this technology. It's worked seamlessly. It's very intuitive. It took us maybe 5 days to get our teachers trained to launch the Moodle. So in 5 days, we trained our teachers and uploaded 1 week's content. And then we went live. And during the course of that week, as teachers were delivering, we were curating content for the next week. And so we were always 1 week ahead of the students in terms of curating content. Also, what this has done for us it was very easy for our students and parents because we had a single portal and it was a single repository for videos, content, assessments, everything happened in one place. Every student at Al-Falaah College has an email address. They have a simple login. We created a digital timetable on our website. Students simply clicked on the subject they wanted to attend and they were into a classroom. A single login got them to their courses on Moodle, and it was absolutely seamless. The Moodle worked very well for us as a single repository for videos, content, and assessments. I must confess, though, that we didn't get to use the assessments to its full. We're still on a learning curve, but some teachers have progressed further than others. But as far as content and videos and delivery, the Moodles served us exceptionally well. What we did from day one when we went live, together with the content on Moodle, we also had face-to-face lessons, and we had a full timetable Monday to Friday. In fact, my matrics went Monday to Saturday. Full-time, formal school timetable, very much like what happened at school. The students used and teachers used, again, a single channel, Google Meets, and we delivered face-to-face lessons Monday to Friday, normal school time. Grade 12s even had Saturdays. And just like Leslie explained, we also had an automated system where all lessons were recorded and were uploaded within half an hour to our Google Drive, and students who had issues with data or for some reason couldn't attend could access these lessons a little later. So just like Leslie said, because we had the experience with online and our students and teachers have taken very well to it, the future at Al-Falaah also is a blended one. We have students back at school currently that are full face-to-face, but we've kept the Moodle going for those classes, and we're still using the Moodle. And on the other extreme, we still have online. So all those classes that haven't yet returned are still on the full online method or platform. But what this has also given is given us an appetite for more online. So what we've done, we've now created an online school, and we are selling Al-Falaah online to students who are unable to return to school or whose schools are unable to offer an online experience. So any student anywhere in the world wanting to continue schooling from home, and if their particular schools are not geared up to offer online, Al-Falaah College has an offer, and students can enroll here because we're doing it for our own students who are at home. And to get another couple of hundred or a couple of thousand students on the online platform is not very difficult for us. Now, the whole experience was not without challenge, and we continue to learn. And I believe every challenge just makes us grow stronger. So some of the challenges we experienced and still continue to experience, although some of them to a lesser degree now because we've sort of overcome them, the skill and tools for our teachers to curate materials. This was a challenge earlier. Some of our teachers are getting a lot better at it now, and the quality of the content, the pedagogy built into the materials and the design of the materials, you can see a level of maturity. Issues of devices, data was a problem. Fortunately, not so much for our teachers, because at Al-Falaah College, every teacher is issued with a school subsidized iPad and or laptop. So that wasn't a problem. Perhaps the challenge was more on the student side, more especially if there were siblings in the same house and the home may not have 2 or 3 laptops or tablets. So, you know, they would have prioritized the grade 12 student to be live, and the other students would listen to the recordings later in the day. Training was a challenge. We had staff development training every Thursday for 2 hours. And every Thursday we introduced staff to one new concept. And they had Friday, Saturday, Sunday to practice, and Monday they would implement. And next Thursday, we'd have the next nugget of training ready for our teachers. And we just set ourselves a target in the first week to do the basics to get us up and running. And every week after that, we put in an additional nugget of training to improve and upskill our teachers. What we found in this journey, that a lot of teaching was taking place, but we were not convinced about how much learning was taking place. We also realized that there wasn't enough student engagement, and we were not sure about the attendance. Even when we saw students' laptops signed up, we were not sure if the student was signed up. And even if the student was there, we were not convinced about the level of engagement. A big challenge was some of our teachers obviously could understand that face-to-face pedagogy and online pedagogy is completely different. Others didn't quite get it and were still trying to sort of make a face-to-face engagement on the online platform, and there was a mismatch, so it didn't quite always work out. And the assessments, conducting assessments and collecting assessments obviously was a challenge. I'd like to end, Craig, with this provocation, that the ingredients that go into making a wonderful strawberry cake are not the same as the strawberry cake. And if I just take this analogy a little further, the right ingredients of the right quality in the right quantities, together with the right method, blended together with the right process, is what will get you the strawberry cake. And I think that same analogy can apply to online teaching. So if you have elements of online teaching, if you have Google Meets, and you have digital content, and you have teachers going online, and you have a Moodle, these are the individual ingredients. But if you don't have the right method and the right process, then it's very much like, Craig, if you were to visit me, and instead of putting out the beautiful chocolate or strawberry cake, I will put out a bowl with flour and a bowl with butter and a container with sugar and some raw eggs and say, enjoy a strawberry cake. I'd like to end on that note. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. Thank you, Zaffar. I couldn't agree more. I do love your metaphor that you're using here with the strawberry cake. I use that a lot as well, and I think it's absolutely spot on. I think I was remiss. I actually meant to introduce Zaffar, but I think he introduced himself. But the one thing he didn't mention, besides obviously being the headmaster or principal of the school, Al-Falaah School, he's also the deputy CEO of AWQAF South Africa, a philanthropic organization serving the needs of all South Africans. So he has both a philanthropic and an entrepreneurial spirit, you see from what they're doing with their online teaching as well. So lots of really fun, exciting things there, and I'll pick up on a few of them later. And last but definitely not least, we're going to hand over to Linda. And very quickly before we hear from Linda, Linda is from St. Mary's in Waverley. And Linda is the EdTech Leader at St. Mary's School in Waverley, Johannesburg. She's also the lead of their newly formed Self-Esteem team, entrepreneurial science, technology, engineering, art, and maths, and teaches digital literacy skills to grade 8 students. She's passionate about including the activated classroom teaching pedagogies, 21st century skills, and adaptable learning strategies in all her teaching and learning. Her hobbies include handiwork, reading, and traveling, particularly to visit her children and their partners who live in the UK. And so we are now going to hand across to none other than Linda. And I'm just going to get your video so that it appears nice and spotlighted. And there we go. Over to you, Linda.
Thanks, Craig. And hello, everyone, wherever you may be. I'm going to do this presentation much like a Pecha Kucha. So I'm going to try to stick to the time limits that I've set for each slide. Right, so what does the new teaching style and my role in it look like at my school? Okay, my role as the EdTech Leader is to help teachers to become their own best version of Dr. Spock as they navigate this unknown universe. At our school, we're fortunate enough that it's a one-to-one environment where every child has access to an iPad or a Chromebook or a laptop of choice. So as the EdTech leader, my job is to provide support, which I do, to the teachers. I do have a team that works with me, and we've extended that team over this lockdown period to a team of 8. And I provide regular webinars for the staff to keep them up to date. They're quite astute already. They've had a lot of training over the years that I've been at the school in terms of using their iPads and using their laptops. Every teacher has an iPad and a laptop to use. We did distribute a lot of the school-owned devices, the Chromebooks and the newer iPads to teachers to make life easier, as well as distributing to families who were a bit short on that. So as I said, I run regular webinars for the teachers. I support them via WhatsApp, email, and I've also created an EdTech support classroom for this. My slides are not advancing now. Oh, there we go. I just put this slide in for a bit of a fun fact. Pretty wild how we used to eat cake after someone had blown on it. Such were the good times. These might never return. Right, in the next slide, I have a snippet of one of our teachers doing emergency online learning, as we're calling it for the moment. It shows how they are, there we go. I'm not sure if you'll hear the sound, but I don't think that really matters because it is edited. I've just taken a part of this video.
Okay, so this was like on the other end of the lesson. I've got to have 3 different pages to tell me when I'm in which lesson and the summary, because this is not like classroom teaching where you teach, you arrive, the kids arrive and you teach. Here we've got to plan every lesson so that we're all in the same place. And setting up is just usually a bit of a disaster. So I'm going to get ready for Form 3 lesson. I've got to test the speed of my Wi-Fi, otherwise I sometimes don't get, okay, I've got enough Wi-Fi to do that. And I need to have them on WhatsApp in case they can't get into the lesson. Get into my lesson. I've got to have a code which corresponds to my WhatsApp group code. And that helps with my poor memory. Then I have to do it on my iPad as well, so that I can be in the classroom twice. Okay, so I'm on that screen twice. So I'm in the class and then I can turn this into a whiteboard by presenting the screen. And
okay, so that just highlights a couple of aspects of what goes on at our school. And that is that our teachers are still quite bound to the conventional way of ensuring that our students all receive the content that is necessary. It also does show that they're quite dexterous in terms of using technology, and Google is the platform that we have decided to use for this entire lockdown period. But now going forward, some of the observations that I've had and interactions, because I've conducted many parent webinars as well during this time. And generally the parents are really happy with what is going on. They feel that their girls are still receiving the same high standard of education that they were receiving prior to lockdown. The girls, on the other hand, because they're conditioned to believe that this is the way to go and we're all aiming for lots of A's in matric, they're also genuinely happy. But I find that they're quite stressed because the timetables, as you saw in that video, have stayed the same as the timetables used during school. So the girls are having to quickly transfer from one meet to another, and this causes stress, then go back to their Google Classroom, check the work that has to be done and hand it in. So on this note, I have decided in my adaptable learning approach, and a good person to follow on this is AJ Giuliani, that I have a lot of respect for. And we need to perhaps taper back a little bit on the resources and put much more time into building relationships. Because as is proved by various studies, it's the relational trust within the entire school community between teachers, students, and staff that is of paramount importance to ensure that our children do achieve the best results at the end of the day. And I've been particularly focused on this because at our school, we also have smaller mentor groups across the board. So in other words, I would have 15 children, 3 from each grade level, and we meet every day to chat and find out how things are going. And I have to say the younger girls, the grade 8 ones, 2 out of the 3 have fallen by the wayside and have quite serious mental health issues. So this is a reason that I'm particularly concerned about building relationships. So it may be that in this time we are physically distanced, but it means that in actual fact, our connectedness is even more important than it was in the past. So how do we deal with this? Okay, so the way we deal with this is that we have our small one-to-one meetings where we don't necessarily talk about anything to do with school at all. It's just a conversation time, that very important connecting time with our students. This morning, I had my group, and I asked them each to bring an object onto the conversation, and we spoke only about the object. It also applies to my adaptable learning approach, in that we want our learning to be suited to every type of child. We have quite a multicultural student body. And with what's been going on in social media and Black Lives Matter, it's made me more aware of the fact that it's all lives that matter, and important to include all cultures, genders, ethnicity, religions, etc. We have our classroom Google Meets, as shown in that little picture. And then also, I know Craig believes in this too, the idea of interactivity when you're having these meetings. It's not all just about delivering the content and filling up those empty vessels. It's about getting them to do stuff. And I've made use over my time with a lot of gamification. And I've just taken some screenshots of some of my favorite websites that I use. A simple bingo game to consolidate facts is much more fun than just listening to what the teacher has to say. The greatest part of my teaching life is that I lead the project or inquiry-based learning module at our school. We do this with our grade 8s and grade 9s, and we collapse the timetable for them for 2 weeks every single term, and we take them through a project or inquiry-based learning situation. And I've come to realize during these last 3 months how wonderfully useful this is as a tool going forward in terms of forming a blended learning approach, or even in terms of moving on to a more online school. The most important part is, again, adaptable education. It caters to everyone's needs. It allows every child to express themselves according to their culture or their belief system. It caters for all the 21st century skills. A lot of self-regulation. They have to plan their learning, although we do guide them quite a bit. It's quite scaffolded, particularly in the grade 8 year. And as we take them through it, we give them more and more space to take their project in their particular direction. So a lot of critical thinking involved, and we play a lot of games and activities to build critical thinking skills. They're able, these two link together, they're able to learn in their own time, and it makes access to devices easier. In a family, as Zaffar alluded to, you don't always have a number of devices to match the number of people within the family system. So it can work on a rota system as to who has access to those devices at what times. It's also pretty much multimodal. You can still, in the online or blended situation, children can still use pen and paper. They can still do drawings. They can still build models, take pictures of them and send them through. And it offers a wonderful opportunity for gamification. In my project and inquiry-based learning tasks, I've always made use of quests where they earn badges and they earn points. I've also made use of breakouts. So that having one coming up now just after half term next week with our grade 9s. So the project will be launched with a quest whereby it's to revise their research skills, learning how to use the school's online digital library, which has been an incredible bonus during this period of online learning, where the girls have got access to research through our digital library and access, of course, to books to read, fiction books. So they will start with a breakout where they have a situation where they've been put into the library and they have to solve a whole lot of issues, discover a whole lot of information using the library system to break out before they lock down in the library for the entire lockdown period. So that's just my intro, and I'm prepared to take questions on our actual approach later on, Craig, as we go through this meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Linda. That's absolutely wonderful. And we have now heard from our three panelists and some really fascinating things that they have shared with us. Thank you all of them for that. As I said earlier, I'm going to give you an opportunity. There is a Q&A. If you can try and post if you've got a question, put in the Q&A thing rather than in the chat room. I see some of you put in the chat, so we don't have to try and monitor two spaces. So if you've typed one in the chat, you'll just see there's another thing that says Q&A. You can paste a question in there. And I will raise those in a moment with the panelists. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to type in a question if you want to type one in where it says Q&A at the bottom. Just quickly coming back to what you were saying earlier, Leslie, and a brief summary of some of the things you said, and I really resonated with the fact that there's no single solution, and I agree. And this is what I find so interesting. I work in this space. I work from schools to universities, and I hear everything from Moodle to Zoom to Google Classroom to Microsoft Teams to 100 other things. And I think that's very important. And one of the words you used there was you have to be brave. And I think there's no doubt this is a time for bravery, because there's nothing more overwhelming when we've got all these solutions and too many solutions, and it makes it quite scary. And so I thought that was very interesting how you said, in a way, your school in Westville Boys High took it a little bit slow. And I think Zaffar had a similar sort of approach to saying, don't rush it, take time before we leap into these things. I just wanted to explore one thing, Leslie. You talked about that you were using a single class system at the moment, and that you said that the teachers were going to be learning from each other, in a sense, in the single class system, rather than having lots of teachers doing the same thing. That's an interesting model. What I wanted to was sort of bounce off you is, what do you think is going to be the future? Is this going to impact the future of how we're teaching? I know it might be in place at the moment that you've got this sort of single class type model, but do you think the future is going to be different, the way we are going to be teaching going forward, even if we pop out the other side of this? What are your thoughts on that? You just need to undo your mic or unmute yourself there.
Craig, that's a very interesting question. What the future holds for us is that it gives us the option, when we're talking about blended, and somebody else asked the question, what is blended learning? I think it was Amy Clayton. It's going to be part online and part face-to-face. Now, what's interesting about this is that you can have, if you've got 3 or 4 teachers teaching the same subject, and each one's got a pet area in that subject, you can have your best teacher presenting material, and we can follow that up with online, with face-to-face conversation in the classroom. So it opens that kind of opportunity as well. So collaboration among colleagues becomes very, very crucial in the way forward.
Yeah, I think that really is interesting, because it's there's no doubt, it seems to be that the model potentially is changing. And I know from a higher education perspective, this makes people afraid. And maybe understandably, because we've been in a certain model for so long. We've taught in the same way, and in a way, maybe we've got quite comfortable with it. And all of a sudden, in a couple of months, and Zaffar, I'm with you, 2020 International Year of the Teacher, no doubt about it. In a couple of months, teachers have had to reinvent themselves, massive stress, massive pressure, and it's often not even really fully appreciated. And I know maybe not all teachers are doing to the same extent, but I've seen stuff in the university environment, what are the lecturers doing? And I'm like, wow, man, you don't understand what lecturers and teachers are doing because you can't see it as obviously. I mean, this learning curve. So, but the other side of this is we're starting to move into a thing that is a little bit scary. So for some teachers, it's like, well, what does this mean for me? Where will I be? What will my role be going forward? Are we going to have the best grade 8 maths teacher as the main one delivering content with smaller, well, not smaller, other teachers doing lessons around that content? And so there's going to be a really, really interesting thing. And I think maybe we'll probably have a panel just on that, trying to envisage where this future is going. So very interesting. Zaffar, are you out there somewhere? If you can just reappear. Oh, there you are. Nice to have you back. I really also loved what you said. Also similar maybe to what Leslie said, not to rush into an approach because you have to be strategic. And what sort of follows on from what I've just said, this, in my view, and I'm sure you would agree with this is not a short-term thing. It's changed forever. There's any teacher or educator who thinks we're going back to the old way, I think is deluded. And I'm hoping this won't happen, but whether there's a COVID-20 or COVID-21, there's a likelihood of that. But even if there isn't, we have reprogrammed education. There's an old thing, if you want to learn a new habit, you've only got to spend, I don't know what the time is, a certain number of weeks or months, and you get a new habit. Wow, have we got new habits now, new habits of learning, new habits of teaching? And so I think your view around being strategic is really, really important. What I wanted to pick up with you mentioned that you're using Moodle as an LMS. It's quite interesting. And I'm going to actually, while you are answering this question, I'm going to just launch a little poll onto the screen because it covers some of this. So those who are out there can answer this poll while Zaffar answers this, because it also asks what people are using. You said you're using Moodle as an LMS, and you talked about it being a single repository. What about Moodle did you find that was particularly useful? Because I know a lot of schools are using either Google Classroom, some are using Moodle, others are using Microsoft's products. How did this actually fit into what you're doing? Because it seems to support more the learning side than the teaching side, I would assume.
Yes, Craig, thank you very much for that question. What we did when we went into lockdown, we had done some research, and my team and I put up a list of 26 possible strategies that we could implement online learning. We looked at each one, the strengths, the weaknesses, and by our matrix, Moodle came up tops. And I'm glad we went this way because it's very intuitive, very simple, and it hasn't given us a single technical hitch across the school, across our 1,000 students and 100 staff members. I think it served us well. Not having experienced any of the other platforms, I don't want to run them down, but I think we made a good choice in terms of it served our needs. And it has many more functionalities, many of which we haven't yet tapped completely. We're just about now getting into assessments and how to use them, etc. But I think it's worked exceptionally well for us, and we're likely to continue with this for a number of reasons. We're already used to it. Secondly, it's low cost. Thirdly, it's seamless with our own Google Classroom, our Google logins, that the school is a Google school, etc. So it served us exceptionally well. And our teachers who were on the side and students who now have a taste of what online is, I don't think want to leave it, quite honestly, Craig. Even if we get back to school, there's still elements of this that will continue with us. And we're not going to go back to the old way completely. And I don't think we'll be on online completely, but we're going to have a blended approach for both of these things going forward.
Right, thanks. It's very interesting, and the reason I raised it is it's interesting because you're using Google Classroom and Moodle, and I work a lot in the Moodle space. And in fact, any of those people who have been on any of my online courses, those are actually hosted in Moodle. And one of the things I try and show people, besides the online course teaching you how to teach with pedagogies, is actually show you what you can do in that space. It is very, very powerful if you want an effective space to engage. And I think you did mention this. You were worried about lots of teaching, how much learning and engagement. And if you build the space properly, it can become a hugely engaging space, you know. And I know it's quite confusing for schools because we say, well, am I a Google school? I think we got to be careful of becoming a Apple school, a Google school, a Microsoft school, or whatever. And it takes a little bit to get comfortable. But if we are going to take a long-term view on this, that this is not just something for the next week or month or this year, we need to build that infrastructure and we need to do it properly. And if we do it properly, I think, wow, you've already, Zaffar, showed what is possible. You can start to even extend outside of your school, offering your school to people all over the country and over the world. So thank you for that. One last thing now, just to pick up on Linda, some of the things you said. I really liked this panel. I've called it Behind the Screens. It's sort of a way, what's happening on the other side of the screens. You actually literally took us and we saw behind the screens, and here you see this teacher and you think, wow, you know she's got iPads and computers and phones where she's doing tests and paper. And that's exactly it. On the other side of the screen, we often don't even see what's going on. So even if this webinar at the moment, you probably can't see, you can just see me. I've got a computer there, I've got some lights, I've got a microphone. Behind the screens, we don't know what's going on. And there's a lot of effort that goes into even setting this up, a lot of effort that goes into every lesson that those teachers are doing. And so thank you for sharing that, because it was really interesting to see behind the screens. One of the things I just wanted to pick up, you said something along the lines of, in some ways you found that the teachers were trying to, this weren't your exact words, but they were trying to mimic the old approaches. How have you found that it's best to try and say, new technology, we need to start thinking in new ways? What are the things you've tried to use to try and get them to don't just be a traditional teacher that teaches in exactly the same way?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's a little bit tricky in that I am not the head of the school. I would have to propose those kind of issues to the head. And as both Leslie and Zaffar said at the beginning, we were thrown into this with literally 48 hours to plan. So at that, we were lucky. We had, I think it was about a week and a half or 2.5 weeks before we went into our April holiday. So it was easier for everyone to just continue as is. And I was actually very hopeful that they would, you know, like was it Leslie or Zaffar spoke about having 2 cohorts, for example, so that they would have a shorter day. I also like the idea that you spoke about, where in the online lesson, you only actually engaging with the students for, say, 20 minutes of the time, and then you allow them time to go and settle down and work on their own. That would be my ideal blended approach, so that they've got time to regurgitate and think and figure out where they are. So to lessen, I mean, our school day runs on 9 periods in a day. Okay, there are double periods as well, so that would reduce it in some instances to probably about 5 and maybe 6 max. But for the younger ones, for grade 8s and 9s, and particularly if you go down into the junior school, they're going to be doing 9 lessons a day where they're running from one meet to the next. And I do think a restructuring of the timetable is a good way to handle this situation, particularly if you do have a really good platform with that is well structured and the students know how to follow it. And I think we're at that point where our students are well tuned into using their Google Classroom and following everything as it's planned out for them on those Google Classrooms. Because, I mean, in the Google Classroom, I know for myself, speaking for myself, my own classrooms that I've created, it will take them to a website that I've created, but the link is there. And everything always comes back to the Google Classroom. And the girls are pretty good at negotiating, but when they run from one meet to the next, I really find that far too hectic for them. And I seriously worry. It's just in the last week, we've had a lot of issues, and it's teachers' mental health as well as students' mental health. I was on a small meet. We have small staff meets as well, where we get together, our professional development, professional growth and learning groups. And we had 4 people in tears, 4 teachers in tears. And because they were so incredibly stressed with coming back to school and filling out forms and making sure all the protocols are in place. And then having to do the teaching at school, and are the children who aren't coming to school getting the same content? So they've had to switch from going to emergency remote learning in the early days, then coming back to school, where we've had to go to what we're calling a blended approach, for want of a better terminology. And when I look at the list of absentees each day, we have just over 100 students in each grade. The matrics are not too bad. We're looking at less than 10 absent in a day. But when you go down to grade 11, you're looking at 25% of them not coming to school, because they're getting to the point, and I think Zaffar alluded to this, that the students are beginning to enjoy online learning. There are a percentage of them who are quite satisfied with it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, we've got to change. We have to, the bottom line is we have to change.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. There's no doubt. I mean, things have changed, they are changing, but I think just to pick up one of your points is it's massive. It's not only the pedagogic mindset change, it's the emotional thing that the teachers are having to deal with. It's just a whole nother level. So it comes back to Zaffar's 2020 International Year of the Teacher Award. I think we're going to have to try and lobby for that, no doubt. Right, let's just pick up some of the questions we've got there in the Q&A thing. Amy, your question is particularly good, and we did touch on it very briefly with Leslie, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that question, because I actually want to have a panel on that particularly, because I think we actually do need to think a lot more of where things are going in the future. As everyone has said, we need to plan for that, and we need to, the best way to do that is to think a little bit about that. So I think we will pick up that one later. Jenny asks here, how do we protect teachers from learners recording sessions, particularly if it's teacher discussing something controversial? Obviously, Zoom or Google Classroom teachers can set the recording, but how do we stop a learner getting out a device and recording the teacher? Anyone want to pick up on that? I saw you nodding, Linda. Do you want to have a stab at that?
We had an issue where a child emailed me, because that's the other thing I do, that also provide support to the children in terms of their tech, who felt that she was being kicked out of the Google Meets. And I had to ask her in which classes was it happening, because then I went to the teacher and said, could you please keep a lookout? Because in Google Meet, it will say so-and-so, or I can't remember now what the other choice was, other than left the meeting, but it doesn't say has been kicked out. It's something to that effect. And it shows in the bottom left-hand corner for a very short period of time. So I had to explain to the teachers, please keep your eye open for that, because the child might be dreaming it up for all we know. But anyway, we discovered that the best solution was to use the meets as set up in Google Classroom. And the teacher was to make that meet link visible just before the lesson, so that students were not joining the meet before the teacher. Because if the teacher joins the meet, the students do not have the capacity to delete or record. But as the question asks, is what if they use another device? You know, it's like third-party recording. You know, in the old days when you used to go to the movies and people would take out their camera and video a movie. You know, I mean, that is plagiarism. And I think all you could do is possibly draw up a policy document that the students have to sign, and just to make them aware that this is actually something that's illegal. You can't actually do that, but there's no way of us physically stopping it as far as I'm aware. I don't know if anybody else has a solution.
Yeah, I think, you know, and we'll see with some of the other questions here, we're in a situation where there are a lot of these questions that have no easy answers. There's questions, for example, how do you ensure if you're doing online exams, for example, that is the person who says it is the person who's doing the exam, you know, so if it's an ultimate choice. And so there's a whole range of really tricky questions. And I think the answers may not be so much in coming back to, I think, what everyone's talked about, a simple, trite little answer, useless plugin. They may require us to rethink what education means, what the models are, how we're doing it, what privacy means in education. You know, maybe your content is going to, and you look at, for example, the music industry. The music industry had to redefine itself. So the music industry, the old days, if you remember, most of you are too young for this, but we used to get stuff on CDs. Do you even remember that? Yeah. Okay. And there used to be places called Musica and whatever. You'd go in there, they had CDs. Some of you might even remember records. And you would go in there and buy this. And what happened when digital came along is people started, you know, just ripping these CDs and just dumping them online. And so we had these sites that popped up where people could just share the content. And the immediate response of the music industry to that was, well, let's try and sue some people. So there'd be a case of a person in England and a one over here, but it was just everywhere. Everyone was just sharing the music. And then some clever people like the Apples of the world and others said, you know what, there's got to be a better way. We can't sell it like that. How about we let you join our community and you pay a small amount, you can have all the music in the world, knowing that you can only listen to a certain amount at a point in time. And what you listen to, we will then pay the artist. And they changed the whole model. And my point of that is that there is some big model change that's required, because we're not going to be able to take the same model of how we teach, how we assess, how we control content and apply it in the new world. There's just too many things like that question that are challenging. And I think that's going to be part of this challenge. So yes, carry on, Linda. You want to say that?
You know, I'm very responsible for teaching digital literacy and how they handle themselves on social media. So this is now a new thing that's going to come into our repertoire of what we do with them in terms of their digital citizenship and possibly their digital footprint. Do they want to be known as someone who's done something like you could only work, I think, on this on an emotional level until such time as it is revamped, as Apple Music did, etc., etc. So we have to just appeal to their better side.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting. Dale King asks, and I want to put this one to you, Zaffar, will COVID-19 be the push factor? We need to see a definite transition within learners from being static consumers, only engaging just before exam time, to independent learners, or will they naturally revert back to their old ways? So that's an interesting one. You did talk a little bit about active learning and engagement. Is this going to be the future, or are we going back?
I think 2020 COVID is not only going to change that aspect of life. I think, as I said in my first slide I put up, the COVID era is going to be the new way we define the world and everything that happens in the world. What happened and what's happening at the moment in our area of learning and teaching, it's going to redefine how it's done, why it's done, and what it is. It's become a driver for a new outcome. And the people that are going to succeed are the people with agility, the people who are adaptable, the people who are able to embrace change, the people who have the courage to face the uncertainty, those that are able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. This is what this COVID 2020 is going to do. And when you come out on the other side, and if you have these skills, or if COVID has pushed you in this direction or nudged you, it has made you a better person. Let me give you an example. Pre-COVID, around March, if anybody said they had a Zoom appointment, you were probably a corporate executive, correct? My 5-year-old now in grade R tells me she has a Zoom appointment at 9 o'clock, Dad. What do you think is going to happen to this child in 10 years' time? Where will she be? Because that was the language of the corporate executive in March this year. It's now the language of a 5-year-old in my house. Where will she be in 10 years' time? when she's beginning to talk like the corporates were, the corporate executives were talking in March. This is a defining moment. And we who are charged with this noble profession of teaching to create the new generation and the new future have a role to play to nudge these people into this new era. I think it's an exciting time, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there is no doubt it's the changes, even if us as teachers haven't changed, which I'd be surprised, but I think most of us, a lot of our learners, I think, as you say, yeah, Dad, I've got a Zoom meeting. You're like, what? And I think once students have been introduced to a new thing, there may be some things they revert back to, but I think there are certain things they're going to go, wow, why are we sitting back in the classroom doing it like we used to do it? I actually liked what we did there for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, however long this is going to go on for. And I think that's going to be a really interesting, and it's going to be a reprogramming of our brains and minds. Right, so there are some other questions, but we are running out of time now. And what I want to do very quickly is just share where our poll got to, because we had a couple of votes in a poll that I put up there. I'll put the results up on your screen if you're interested. Which of the following online teaching approaches does your education institution use? So most people are obviously using live broadcast type things, and some are using other little fun things like online quizzes, chat rooms, and then 34% are using self-paced learning, whether that's via some online platform. The LMS being used, it looks like most people are in Google Classroom, followed by Teams, Moodle, Blackboard, and then 22% are using other LMSs. Our educators have received sufficient training. So we've probably got about 43% saying they agree or strongly disagree. Another 25% only neutral. So we're only sitting at about 30% feeling they've had enough training. And I think that's become a key element of everything here. If you don't have enough training, you're not going to be prepared for this. Our educators are confident in creating effective lessons. Again, probably a similar sort of thing there. 22% saying, yeah, we think we could do it, but that's a small amount. Right, so that was that. Thank you very much for that. What I want to do just before we close off and get some final messages from everyone here, from our panelists, I just want to a last little bit. And thank you everyone for the chatting and for your insight there. I do see a few people did post questions here, so sorry we probably didn't get to all of those questions. Can Zaffar explain what some of the nuggets were that they began with in teaching teachers? So there's someone wanted to know what your nuggets are. You want to have a quick stab at that, Zaffar? Give us a nugget or two.
Yeah, look, for example, how do you upload a video? Whether you're getting it from YouTube or somewhere else, or if you've created your own video, how do you load that on Moodle? How do you launch a quiz on Moodle? So each week we took a different topic, and we took a different aspect of Moodle and created training around that, and then allowed teachers to implement that in the week ahead. So we listed sort of all of its features and then decided which ones we wanted to introduce teachers to. I hope that suffices.
Yeah, thanks. Perfect. Right. So we unfortunately can't go to all of those. What I want to very quickly do is ask each person to give each of our panelists just give a short little takeaway. I always find, when you're a session like this, you hear a lot of things and you've got so many things you'd like to, wow, that was amazing. So I'm just going to quickly whirl around and just give them a minute. If there's one takeaway you want people to leave with, what will it be? So let's start with you, Leslie. What would your takeaway be for everyone?
For me, Craig, I like the way people are talking about assessment. But having the change in teaching, we also need to look at how we're going to assess differently. And that will be the big challenge. So I'm glad that a lot of people are busy looking into that, because that's very quiet at the moment. And how are we going to change the curriculum? We definitely need to look at how do we make the curriculum more accessible to learners and give them the time. that they need to engage with the work. Yeah, that's from me. Thanks, Ray.
Sorry, finding the tech, muted myself. Zaffar, over to you.
Look, for me, I think what this has done for us is the content is no longer the most important thing. I think in the classroom, in the old, before COVID era, teachers stood there and the most important thing was the content. An online platform doesn't make the content the most important thing, or the delivery of the content is no longer the most important thing. There are other priorities that we need to look at. And also for teachers to sort of give them confidence, we need to make sure that whatever technology we put into the system must be simple, reliable, and effective, and not to complicate the lives of teachers. Thank you so much, Craig.
Right, thank you very much. Sorry about the music interlude there.
No problem.
Finally, Linda, your takeaway.
Yes, thanks very much. I'd agree with everything. And I particularly like Zaffar and Leslie's idea of careful strategic planning. I'd like to put it into an acronym, launch. So the L is we've got to look, listen, and learn. We've got to know exactly what our community needs within our school. As Leslie said, everyone is different. The A, we've got to ask a million questions. And it's not just sending out surveys, it's on the ground. It's talking face to face with people as to what they want. The U, we've got to understand our community. We've got to understand our school and what they need. The N is for new ideas. Create lots of new ideas. Then we can get to the C, where we create a prototype, like Zaffar has done. He set up his beautiful Moodle. And the H is we highlight, and away we go. We launch our new program.
Right. Thank you very much. And a good teacher who gives an acronym. Very handy, helps us learn. Just to finish off, what I got for everyone, and you might not have heard of this, we have an online digital pedagogies course. And a lot of the schools like Zaffar's schools and even Westville Boys High and Linda's school have done this. But what we're offering is a introduction to the course for those of you who especially attended this. So you can find that at that web address at the top there, bit.ly/ActStarter. Or if you're one of those tech people, you can pull out your camera and scan that QR code and it'll bring you through to that link. And you can sign up for free for that course. So it'll help give a bit of insight into some of the things. So I've got this crazy music that's going now. I'm going to try to stop it so I don't have to speak over it. Just finally, thank you once again to our panelists. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Zaffar. Thank you, Leslie, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for our participants, wherever you were from all over the world, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you on another panel in the future. So we've got a very exciting future ahead of us with great teachers like this and all of you. I think there are some wonderful things that we can do. So thank you, everyone, and have a beautiful evening.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks very much. Have a nice evening.
See.